Welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. And as we get ourselves going for the evening, welcome to you all. So, having a couple of technical difficulties with some of the computing, so we were trying for something a little different tonight and it did not pan out. Tasriq, welcome. We were hoping for it to work out and it didn't, so we're a little bit late there by 6 whole minutes. There you go. But nevertheless, we are here to start up, and as we get going, we are going to remind you all that we do have a number of rules for the live, things that keep it safe for everybody. The first is that our one main rule is don't be rude, on the grounds that we have all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life that join on the channel, and we are not here to either promote nor deride any particular thing, but rather to explore for our own interest and education interesting things that might be out there that is both weird and wonderful, sometimes supernatural and paranormal, sometimes not, and sometimes just plain strange. So we've been doing this for a little bit now, and as we go along we have discovered that we have the inevitable difficulty of trollage. So our rule is, unless you are a known person, we do not let you join on the live as a multi-guest. We do have to know you somewhat, and it's no offense to any of you, but more a case of keeping things nice and safe. Welcome to Roxanne Pantera. That all today. The Emperor's Son is here. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're in fine and fabulous form. But with all of that said, I am going to say that you are welcome to have your opinions and comment them as well. Just that you do it in a polite manner. We don't allow spamming of the guests or messing with the guests on, so please, again, none of that. But do share your comments and thoughts, like, share, subscribe, do all of those good things that make the channel go, because it goes because of you. You are what makes it happen, and that is important to us. Huge thanks to the Emperor's Son for the heart me. I do appreciate that greatly. Thank you very, very much. Now, over the last year, we've been doing a whole lot of stuff, different things here and there, and every now and then I'll come across an interesting little bit that doesn't really fit anything, so I sort of keep it aside. And tonight's live is a very strange selection of oddities, suitably weird and wonderful to amuse us. And of course you may give your opinions on all of it. In many of the ones that we've got, we don't actually have answers to them, but that just makes it all the more interesting, doesn't it? So hopefully you will enjoy. We've got a good one, and yeah, please do comment your opinions. It does matter in a very great deal. I do apologize for no live last night. I was in fact out. In case you don't know, I stay in the Natal Midlands, and one of the great things that we have here is a thing called MISS, Music in the Hills. And you would be truly amazed at the quality of the musicians that we have out here. We've got some really high quality bands, and MISS has actually become that level of famous among musicians that we get some really good ones from all over South Africa that come down, especially when they can, to do a bit on the MISS stage. And it was the last one for the year, and I got to say that it was truly amazing. In fact, I would highly encourage, if you're into your music, there's a band called Hot Fuzz, and they are really, really, really good. Amazing vibe, great music, and all kinds of different ways. They're very young and dynamic and hugely talented, and they were the headline act last night, and they were really, really well worth it. So if you're into your music, go give them a look up. I do believe they're on Facebook. And they do covers of all kinds of songs, and some incredibly surprising ones that they've made their own in all kinds of ways. Really good stuff. But that is neither here nor there. Tonight, as I say, we've got an eclectic selection of interesting things, and the first set is disturbing archaeological finds, and it's a rather nice one. So let's get going. 1987, in the Atapuerca Mountains in Spain, found a cave housing the skeletal remains of 28 people. The bones, very, very interestingly, are dated at around 430,000 years BC. And perhaps this is proof, if you will, that humans are humans no matter how old, because to the shock of the researchers, they discovered that one of the deceased was a murder victim. They managed to piece the skull back together and found 2 head wounds, the age and sex of the victim, and we have our cat has joined us. There we go. It's going to be a good live. We have the Munchkin with us, and she's clearly cold. It's quite a chilly day. So the cat has come to say hello. So the age and sex of the victim were unclear, but what could be determined was that they had been repeatedly struck by a blunt object such as a spear or a stone axe. And it's eerie to think that this crime went undiscovered for hundreds of thousands of years. So it seems that there have been the darker elements in society for pretty much all of time, which is kind of cool and sort of freaky. In our next one, 2018, archaeologists in northern Italy discovered some interesting remains at a mass burial site dating back between the 6th and 8th centuries CE. One of the deceased was a middle-aged man whose arm had been amputated below the elbow and replaced with a knife. Upon further examination that they did, researchers found that there was evidence that he had worn the weapon as a genuine prosthesis. The signs of extreme wear on his teeth and the unusual bone ridge in his shoulder all suggested he had held the knife with straps that he frequently tightened with his mouth. They also found a buckle and some decomposed material that might have been leather near the pointy prosthesis. Some serious medieval badass, or maybe even an ancient serial killer. But of course, long dead, and so no evidence to explain why. Or maybe he was just the local butcher, of what we ask. But definitely a creepy discovery. Now, the next rather interesting one is a little bit more creepy. 2001, an excavation at a Bronze Age settlement in Scotland uncovered two skeletons, that of a man and a woman. The skeletons were approximately 3,000 years old and had been intentionally mummified, in this case preserved in the peat bogs to slow decomposition. And we do know scientifically that burial in a peat bog would absolutely cause a natural form of mummification, and it preserves the bodies for a very, very long time. So they're an incredibly valuable find in that it leaves a lot of evidence, including even things like stomach contents and all the rest. So great excitement, as you can imagine. And they were taken in for further examination, whereupon they discovered something unsettling. The skeletons were in fact composed of parts from a number of bodies. Nicknamed the Scottish Frankenstein mummies, the woman was made up of a male skull, a female torso, an unidentified arm, and the man actually composed of bones from 3 separate males, a human skeletal jigsaw puzzle with absolutely no explanation at all. Why? What would have been the point? What were they doing? Why would they do such a thing? And of course, there are no answers. It's a strange and twisted thing. Nevertheless, let's go on to our next one. Now, in the 16th century, they introduced Scotland's witchcraft laws in a series of rather sensationalized nationwide trials known as the Great Scottish Witch Hunt. In 1597, there were 31 cases in Aberdeen alone. So what's a town to do with all these witches? Well, if you guessed Lockham Up, in the one place that a witch might be afraid of entering, then you'd be right. According to research carried out by historians, it was discovered that the St. Mary's Chapel, a local church on the outskirts of Aberdeen, serves as a detainment facility for the suspects. The building still possesses a 2-inch iron ring embedded in the wall, where archives have shown it was used to chain up the accused. Now, an interesting fact, which perhaps is less than popular among the pagan community, who very much enjoy the sensation of the times of persecution and the burning times and all the rest of it. It's actually largely fiction. Most of the witches burnt in the burning times were in no way witches at all. They certainly weren't pagans. Welcome to the Endless Thoughts. Lovely to have you on board. Huge thanks for the likes. I hope you're having a fantastic evening. Thank you very much for the heart to me. I do appreciate that. It's always good to have you on board. Allow me to at least pop you onto the multi-guest. Endless Thoughts, of course, is not only a long-standing friend of the channel, and certainly somebody well worth following. So I do encourage that. Welcome. She also does some very good content herself, and is well worth having a look at there for that as well. So do show your support there as well. So talking about the burning times when witches were burnt, by and large, not a single pagan was the result of these things at all. Christianity was the standard all over Europe at that time, and by and large the burning times had mostly to do with arguments between Catholics and Protestants, and a great deal of fear on the part of the people, and shall we say a reasonable amount of cheating on a part of those perpetrating, as one of the great laws was, if I accused you and you were found guilty of witchcraft, I got to keep all your belongings. So it was very much a case of a financial move rather than any real concern of witchcraft. And by and large, the number of pagans that were around at the time was very thin and largely ignored. It was more a political thing than anything else. So regrettably, the whole burning of the witches was not a real thing in terms of actual witchcraft. It's a modern fiction. Nevertheless, moving along, evidence of ancient chemical warfare. Another interesting one. By the way, Endless Thoughts, we are currently looking at all the little things that I found during my research over the year that we didn't really have anything to do with. They sort of built up and I kept note on, but they didn't fit to any one thing. So I thought we'd touch on all of them. So it's a bit of an eclectic one tonight. So I do hope you enjoy. And all of you comment to support the algorithm. Ta-da! Spooky, welcome. I'm glad to see you are here too. Ancient chemical warfare. So, 2009.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Spooky. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
It's funny how I just listened to chemical warfare.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I think it was absolute bullshit.
Oh, why?
Well, maybe it's true. I don't know.
Well, we know it did happen in World War One.
No, I'm talking about here in South Africa.
I would very much doubt it ever happened in this country. It wasn't a thing. Wrong kind of war, for one thing.
It was spreading of AIDS. Apparently, white people were spreading AIDS, injecting people with AIDS. I think, if they were going to do that, they would probably use a much more effective thing than AIDS.
Yeah, that I've got to say is the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard ever.
Yes. And it was a white guy saying that white people did that, spreading AIDS, which I think is bullshit. We know AIDS originated from the Congo.
Yes, and it spread largely via the trucking routes,
Yeah,
medically. Yeah, absolutely. And there's medical evidence to show that it was the trucking routes that caused its spread. It
yeah,
appears that truckers get up to special means to relieve boredom on the long journeys. But yeah, no, it was never ever used. I actually know people, funnily enough, that worked in the secret police back in the day. And while there were a number of certain skullduggeries going on, that was never one of them ever. And even the timing is completely wrong for it as well. No, I'm afraid not. So,
yeah. No, that guy. I'm not sure what he was trying to do. He was, I don't know. They probably do it for views.
I'm pretty sure so. Where was he speaking from?
Well, it was a shared clip.
So we don't know where the original.
No.
There's a number of things that people have been saying on TikTok just lately, especially channels that are supposed to be real historical type things and contemporary type things, but real, that they're utterly ludicrous, and you can absolutely see it was clickbait.
Yeah.
But we do know that chemical warfare was used by the ancient Romans, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yes, so here's an interesting one. So what I've done over the year, with all the lives I've been doing, I'll come across like a little thing. It's not big enough to be alive, and it doesn't fit to what I was researching, but it's interesting. And I've kept them all up. So tonight is an eclectic sort of gathering of weird things that I discovered. Many of them inexplicable, not all paranormal necessarily, or, but just weird and interesting. So, yeah, I thought I'd put them all together and do it on that. Some of them you might like. We've gone through the Spanish bones that were found in a cave with 28 skeletons from 430,000 BC, where one of the people was in fact murdered. So a 430,000 murder mystery. So why? We don't know. There was a discovery from about the 6th to 8th century time in northern Italy, where a skeleton was discovered with a guy who had lost his arm and replaced it with a prosthetic knife. So instead of having the lower, so from about the elbow down, he had lost his arm, and he had a knife put on instead. Why, we don't know. And then there was the Scottish Frankenstein mummies, where they found some deliberately mummified bodies in a peat bog, which we know slows down the decomposition. But the bodies were made up of several different people. We don't know why. So, yeah, some interesting things thus far. And now, 2009, they did an excavation in the ancient Roman city of Dura Europos, in what is in modern-day Syria. And archaeologists found evidence of one of the oldest instances of chemical warfare. During the siege of Dura Europos in about 256 CE, the resident Romans tunneled into shaft mines dug by their Persian attackers. 20 of these Romans were killed not from swords or spears, but from a lethal cloud of sulfur dioxide created from burning a mixture of sulfur and pitch. Once inhaled, the smoke turned into acid in the soldiers' lungs and killed them. Though chemical warfare might seem to be a modern thing, its origin clearly dates back a very long way. And I can tell you from my small background in science, chemistry, that if you mixed sulfur and pitch and set it alight, it would be very effective and quite a horrible way to die. Truly awful. You're essentially going to create a form of sulfuric acid in the body. And as you can imagine, that would not go down well at all. Now, the next interesting one, two ships. In 1845, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. Good names. They set off from England on an expedition helmed by Sir John Franklin. Franklin was a seasoned explorer who wanted to travel across the Canadian Arctic in an exploration of the Northwest Passage. And if any of you know anything about Canadian history, the Northwest Passage was a very big deal and historically mattered a great deal. So obviously this would have been a serious exploration. The two vessels carried around 129 crewmen in total, and they soon became trapped in the ice and were never heard from again. The sailors on board were exposed to terrible conditions and began dying of varying causes, including hypothermia, unsurprisingly, and lead poisoning. Later expeditions made some very gory discoveries among the wreckage that seemed to suggest that some of the sailors turned to cannibalism when they ran out of food. Welcome, welcome. How are you? Lara. So, yeah, early trips out were far more dangerous than you might think. And it seems that the old story is true, that civilization is only 3 days from savagery when things go bad. I don't know, what do you think of that? Do you think it's true? Is civilization only a few days from savagery? Might be true. It might be. Human beings can do some fairly frightening things, it seems. Nevertheless, moving on to the next one, which maybe is a little paranormal, and maybe it's not. Who's to say? We are in Drosko, Poland, and there were excavations done in a 17th century cemetery. And a lot of it was as you would expect, but there were a couple of graves in there that were not your standards. Some of the deceased had been buried with heavy stones or even sickles placed on their necks. And it's thought that these measures were to prevent posthumous mischief. Now, in traditional Slavic culture, cremation was a very popular form of removal of the bodies, because they believed only this process would properly release the soul, because if not, well, you could have varying things like the Vukodlak and the vampire, and they might rise from the crypt. But a good cremation would ensure that your loved one would go on properly. But it seems that in around the 7th and 9th centuries, Christianity took over and the local beliefs faded away, and burying became the practice. But it seems that this new practice may have provoked a number of fears, and other methods and techniques were employed to prevent the dead from rising as vampires. A rather scary thought. But of course, I'm sure that none of it's true, certainly. Or is it? Then we have a rather sad one. So Ashkelon in southern Israel was the site of a very unfortunate discovery in 1988. Beneath a bathhouse in a sewer dating back to the late Roman and early Byzantine era, archaeologists found the skeletal remains of almost 100 newborn babies. They showed no signs of injury or trauma, and examination of them indicated that all of them lived for less than 3 days. And initially it was believed that these would all be female, which was fairly consistent with widespread practices at that time. But it later determined that the remains were pretty much both genders. And the only explanation was that these were the discarded remains of prostitutes who made their living in the bathhouse. What a sad, sad thing. So sometimes things are wonderful, sometimes they are weird, but not always both. The next rather interesting thing, oh my goodness, I've just noticed now, huge thanks to those who have given promotion there, especially Endless Thoughts and Spooky. We have reached our live goal. That's rather nice. Very glad to see that, and much thanks to you all. You guys are amazing. We have a couple of great supporters of the channel, and I must say that I encourage you all to support them too. The TikTok only really works well if we look after each other. So Endless Thoughts, Spooky Streamer Thought, and Emperor's Son, show them some love as well. Go and like and follow them and do some good things for them. So Shimao, a site along the Great Wall of China, is a large fortified Bronze Age settlement that is covered, rather oddly, by a stepped pyramid. And under the pyramid, archaeologists discovered 6 pits filled with human skulls. The skulls belonged to 80 young girls, and they seem to have been the result of human sacrifice. Chief, hi. we shall allow you to join in. Welcome, welcome. Yes, I do too. I would have loved to have seen what it was really like. Chief, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Welcome.
So basically, we've spent a year doing weird and wonderful things on this channel, and I found a number of little things that were never big enough for a live, but I kept them all together. So tonight's live is a really weird mix of all the strange things that I found over the year. So I hope you enjoy the weird stuff.
Okay.
Yes, so do give comments as and when. So they believed that these were actual human sacrifices, and it turned out that in ancient China, especially during the Bronze Age, sacrifices were a common practice. I did not know that. And it was for a number of reasons. Sometimes they were offerings to the river god Hebo, and others they were carried out as funeral rites where slaves went with their owners or concubines with their lords. But nobody's really clear why these ones were sacrificed. They're just 80 rather sad random young ladies that were knocked off in the Bronze Age in China. We don't know why. So, yeah, maybe one day we'll find ways to discover why these things all occurred, but who's to say? Now, one thing which I think we will all agree with, that when it comes to wildlife, Australia has more than its fair share of kind of terrifying creatures that are more than willing to knock you off. And I think that we discovered in one of our lives way back when that even before you've hit the beach and you're still knee-deep in the water of the ocean, you're already going to be in the position to encounter 3 of them. So it can be a fairly dangerous place. But the officially named Beacon Island is one that has earned the nickname Murder Island. And why? Well, the events didn't actually happen that long ago at all. It happened only in 1629. And that year, a Dutch vessel called the Batavia embarked on its maiden voyage, carrying soldiers, sailors, and civilians bound for what is now called Indonesia. A failed mutiny attempt on board caused it to shipwreck, and dozens drowned. A few hundred survivors were left stranded on the nearby Beacon Island. Mutineers went on a rampage, murdering 125 of the survivors. Many of them were also sexually assaulted. Almost 400 years after the unfortunate event, scientists were still unearthing the remains of the murder victims, and others who managed to escape the massacre and lived out their lives on what then would have been a pretty remote and empty place. So, yeah, weird and interesting and kind of strange. Moving along, however, one of the things that I suppose in the modern age is quite important, medically speaking, is prosthesis. The idea, haha, hee hee. Thanks for those likes there. Jimbunal. Jimboon AI? Not really sure how to say that, but welcome, welcome. And in the modern day, in order to allow you to look normal, there have over the centuries been a number of prostheses. And one such thing, no problem, Chief. One such thing are prosthetic eyes. Now, in the modern day, it's not a big deal. I'm sure that they're used all the time. However, one of the really weird things is they're actually a lot older than you might think. And there was an ancient grave where they discovered the body of a woman who had a prosthetic eye. And the estimated age was between around 2,900 and 2,800 BC. So around 5,000 years old. The woman was around 30 years old. And they reckon that this is probably the earliest evidence of an artificial eye that was medically inserted into the left eye socket. In fact, probably the first ocular prosthesis in medical history. The design of the eye was associated with aesthetics. It was designed to beautify the wearer, who was probably rich, a fairly high socio-economic class woman. And this is because the eye was discovered in its supposed place. It was within the body still. So she had obviously lost her eye but still wanted to look right. Secondly, the design of the eye was a copy of the natural anatomy, designed to look normal. It had, like a natural eye, a convex surface, a spherical feature. It has a smaller circle in the center that would denote the cornea. There are white spots on the conjunctiva of the eye that copies what a real eye would look like. And there were golden wires inside the eye designed to look like veins or capillaries, just like a real eye would have. And I think that's pretty damn cool if you think about it. It was found in a burned down city. I'm trying to see if they tell you exactly where it was. It was not just an imitation. It was slightly stylized, judging by it's got a strange pattern on that seemed to indicate that whoever did it understood that light mattered to eyes, and that they had an understanding of how eyes actually work, which shows far more medical understanding than we attributed to people 5,000 years ago. It's from somewhere in Iran. There we go. So the burnt city in Iran, that's what I was looking for. A very interesting and strange find in that regard. Well, yes, now that's an interesting point as well. The interaction between gods and humans, a mythological era, and I got to agree with Endless Thoughts on this. I would have very much liked to have been around to see that kind of thing as well. I know Spooky does not believe in that sort of thing, but I think it would absolutely be amazing if we could have been in what some cultures refer to it as the heroic age, where you had gods and demigods and more. Hey Alice, welcome, welcome. I hope you're in fine and fabulous form. Now the next thing is a really interesting one, and one which caught my interest very greatly. And it is the Lycurgus cup. It is made from Roman glass in the 4th century. And what makes it really strange, it is a cage cup. Okay, made from dichroic glass, which shows a different color depending whether or not the light is passing through it or not. So out of direct light beams going through it, it looks one color, and when light is going through it, it changes color. A caged cup essentially is a very stylized metal cage. In this case, a very beautiful one depicting varying scenes with vines and all. And the actual cup part sits in the cage made of this glass. So the dichroic glass is green from reflected light, but red in transmitted light. So dichroic basically means two colors, dependent on whether or not the light is going through it. So if lit from in front, it's green, and if the light's behind coming through to you, it's red, which is pretty damn cool. It's also one of the few examples of a complete Roman cage cup, or diatritum, where the glass has been painstakingly cut and ground back to leave only the decorative cage on the original surface level. Many parts of the cage have been completely undercut. Most cage cups have a cage with geometric or abstract designs, but this one is a complete composition with figures showing the mythical king Lycurgus, who obviously gives the name to the cup, who tried to kill Ambrosia, who was the follower of the god Dionysus, Bacchus to the Romans, Dionysus to the Greeks. She was transformed into a vine that twined around the enraged king and restrained him, eventually strangling him. Dionysus and two followers are shown taunting the king as he is strangled. The cup is the only well-preserved figural example of a cage cup, making it really interesting, a great historical thing, and yes, depicting the very gods that Endless Thoughts would like to know more about. So yes, now interestingly, the glass itself is achieved by making glass with tiny proportions of nanoparticles of gold and silver dispersed in colloidal form throughout the glass material. Now, the process used remains unclear, and it's likely it was not well understood even by the makers, or maybe it was, and it was probably discovered by accidental contamination with minutely ground gold and silver dust. Glassmakers may not have known that gold was involved, as the quantities are so tiny that they may even have come from a very small proportion of gold in any silver added. Most Roman silver coins contained very small traces of gold left by accident, either as residue on tools or from other work in a workshop. And the very few other surviving fragments of Roman dichroic glass vary considerably in their two colors. This one is a particularly good one. So whether or not they knew what they were doing when they made it exactly is hard to say, but the glass flux would have to have around 330 parts silver and 40 parts gold per million parts glass. So yeah, very tiny amounts. But they made it, and it was there, and it was particularly cool in that regard, so I thought I would share that with you. Now, our next interesting thing is puquios. Now, what are puquios? From the Quechua, pucyu, meaning source, spring, or water well. Puquios are ancient systems of subterranean aqueducts that allow water to be transported long distances in hot, dry climates without loss of much water to evaporation. Puquios are found in the coastal deserts of southern Peru, especially in the Nazca region, where you get the famous Nazca lines, and in northern Chile, of all places, which is pretty cool. 43 puquios in the Nazca regions are were still in use in the early 21st century and relied upon to bring fresh water for irrigation and domestic use in desert settlements. The origin and dating of the Nazca puquios are disputed, although some archaeologists estimated that construction began as early as 500 CE by the indigenous people of the Nazca culture. The technology of the puquios is similar to that of the qanats of Iran and other desert areas of Asia and Europe, including Spain. A few puquios in northern Chile and in parts of Peru were probably constructed at the initiative of the Spanish after the conquest of the Inca in the 16th century, but the Nazca ones are absolutely local. And it's a very fascinating way and ingenious of basically having a way to transport water underground by what are supposedly supposed to be very primitive people. Now, some say that they got the idea from the Spanish, others say no. It seems that there's a bit of argument, as the technology is sort of the same, but then it is what it is. So it seems maybe that we will never really know. But they were certainly used by the Spanish, at least. So, nevertheless, now, how exactly they worked is not totally clear, but they did absolutely work. And they transported water to places that have less than 25 millimeters annually. So really, really deserty places that would be terribly difficult to live in without a solid source of water in that regard. But they managed to bring the water to the desert because the mountains, of course, would get water. So you could make these aqueducts and allow the water to flow down. And where an open aqueduct would fail, because if it's that hot and dry, it'll just evaporate, these ones managed to stop it from evaporating so it could flow all the way to where they need it. And yeah, pretty amazing. The aqueducts are generally around 10 meters underground, though some are not quite as that. And they flow through tunnels downslope, emerging into a trench-like pukios for distribution into irrigation canals and for drinking and domestic purposes. So the canals are only opened, as it were, at the point where they're supposed to be. So they built these things to allow them to tunnel them along. The underground tunnel is about 1 meter square, sometimes reinforced with wooden beams. In the modern day, they do the same thing, and you just reinforce with cement, with varying vertical shafts extending to the surface, which permit access to the water in a small way for maintenance and repair. The funnel-shaped eyes, or ojos as they're called, are spaced from 10 to 30 meters apart. The length of the gallery ranges up to about 372 meters, coming down to where it's needed, and then the trench version may be up to 1 kilometer long, which is pretty damn impressive as well. So there you go. Architecture that proves people can be a lot cleverer than you think. Now, along with all of these strange and weird and wonderful, we do have to talk about the Antikythera mechanism, 1st century BCE shipwreck, used to calculate astronomical data. And it's on our list of the weird simply because it is that cool. Something as complex as that, as old as that, shows that our understanding of how advanced people were back in the day is wrong. That's as far as we can say. It's wrong. Now, the next interesting one is another one that shows that back in the day, people knew a great deal more than we think they did. We always think that modern stuff is all now. We modern. But, well, so were they in their day. Now, one such thing which is particularly cool is the HEROES engine. This one's for you, Endless Thoughts. The HEROES engine, or aeolith pile, is sometimes referred to as a Heron's engine, and it is a simple bladeless radial steam turbine that spins when the water in the central container is heated. Torque is produced when steam jets exiting the turbine. Now, the Greek-Egyptian mathematician and engineer Hero of Alexandria described this device in the 1st century AD. And many sources claim that he was the inventor, but Vitruvius was the first to describe this actually in his De Architectura around about 30 BC, which goes to show that actually it is slightly misnamed and it's a lot older than we thought. So even BC, they had steam engines, reaction steam turbines, if you will. Now, it's not really a practical source of power or a direct predecessor to the modern steam engine that was invented during the Industrial Revolution, but the fact is it existed and it worked. And Eleopile comes from a mixture of ancient Greek alios and the Latin word pila, which literally means the ball of Aeolus. Aeolus was the Greek god of air and wind. And it applies steam to perform work. And you could actually build one. They absolutely do work. And you can use them to drive a small turbine, I suppose. Now we know that both Hero and Vitruvius draw on a much earlier work by Ctesippus, who came from around 285 BC, possibly, who was an inventor and mathematician in Alexandria in Ptolemaic Egypt, and he wrote the first treatise on the science of compressed air and its use in pumps. Aleopilae are a hollow brazen vessel which have an opening or mouth of small size, by which means they can be filled with water prior to the water being heated over the fire, but a little wind is emitted. And as soon as the water begins to boil, a violent wind issues forth. Hero takes quite a practical approach in his explanation on how to make one. Steam engine. Place a cauldron over a fire. A ball shall revolve on a pivot. A fire is ignited under the cauldron containing water and covered at the mouth by the lid. With this, the bent tube communicates, the extremity of the tube being fitted into a hollow ball. Opposite the extremity, place a pivot resting on the lid, and let the ball contain 2 bent pipes communicating with it at the opposite extremities of a diameter, and bent in opposite directions, the bends being at right angles and across the lines. As the cauldron gets hot, it will be found that steam entering the ball through it passes out through the bent tubes towards the lid and causes the ball to revolve, as is the case of dancing figures. Now, we don't know if this actually had any practical use at all, or a whimsical novelty, or maybe an object of reverence showing the power of the Greek god, or if it was just a wonder that would be put in a temple. So there's that. It may have been a philosophical device, one demonstrating the ideas of how the heavens and the winds might work. We're not really sure, but nevertheless, it's very interesting. There are those that may have hinted that it could have made a steam-driven boat, but that was never actually proved in any manner or form. But nevertheless, an ancient and fascinating thing which is well worth knowing about. Now the next one involves an invention by Zhang Heng, a very interesting fellow. He was a Chinaman from around 78 AD to 139 AD. He was a polymathic scientist and statesman in the Eastern Han Dynasty and was well educated. He was known as an astronomer, mathematician, seismologist, hydraulic engineer, inventor, geographer, cartographer, ethnographer, artist, poet, philosopher, politician, and literary scholar. So, yes, he began his career as a minor civil servant in Nanyang, but became the chief astronomer and prefect of the major for official carriages and the palace attendant at the imperial court. He was a bit of a controversial figure, so he didn't get the status of grand historian because of his rivalry with the palace eunuchs during the reign of Emperor Shun, and eventually he was forced to retire. But his inventions were pretty cool. He did a number of interesting ones, and the one that we are interested in today is his seismoscope. Now, you may have actually heard of it without realizing who invented it. I want you to imagine a large pot, and on the outside of the pot, at all 8 cardinal directions, are dragons, and arranged are further dragons below, and there is a ball in the mouth of the upper dragon, and when you have an earthquake, the clever device in the pot senses in which direction the earthquake is coming from, and that dragon, by the tilting of what is inside, will drop a ball into the mouth of the dragon below, thus indicating the direction in which the earthquake is coming from. It's found to this day in the Sheshan Seismic Station at the foot of West Sheshan Mountains. And it's a very interesting device because, number one, it works. They have obviously made a replica of his ancient seismoscope because you can't put something like that out in public. People in the time, of course, didn't know that it was shifting tectonic plates that caused earthquakes. So earthquakes were explained as a disturbance in the cosmic yin and yang, along with the displeasure of heaven with the current dynasty. But Heng himself actually believed earthquakes were caused by wind and air, and he invented his seismoscope around about 132 AD, and it records the disturbances, indicating roughly the direction of an earthquake well over 100 miles away. His device released a bronze ball from one of the 8 dragon heads. The ball falls into the mouth of a corresponding, it's a toad, not a dragon below, sorry. Each toad represented a direction similar to those on a compass. What makes his seismoscope so impressive is that the modern ones are not as good as the real one. And the real one is far more sensitive than any modern versions thereof, which is pretty cool. A genuine thing that genuinely worked way back when, to show you that people understood things. I am suitably impressed. Now, the next interesting thing that I rather enjoyed besides their amazing glass is Roman concrete. Now, essentially concrete is a modern thing. That's the bottom line. Our concrete as we know it is very much a modern thing. But the Romans had a kind of concrete well back, and it was very effective. And what's interesting is that the materials used to make Roman concrete, when it's made, produce far less carbon emissions. Now, can we recreate it? Well, there was a research team at the University of California in Berkeley that studied Roman concrete that managed to endure for over 2,000 years in the same conditions that cause modern concrete to degrade after about 50 years. And the key to the durability was a mixture of lime with volcanic ash, which produces a concrete that includes aluminium, something that modern concretes lack. Modern cements or concretes rely on limestone, but the Roman recipe calls for much less of it. And that means that Roman concrete can be created at temperatures nearly 1,000 degrees lower than modern cements. As a result, using Roman cement means not only a far more durable material, but one that is produced with less fuel in less time, making it more efficient and more environmentally friendly. And that's a good thing. We know that Portland Cement alone, the company manufacturing Portland Cement, accounts for 7% of the carbon dioxide that industry puts into the air, which is a hell of a lot. So if we could have something that does far less and works better, maybe we need to look into that. It seems that the old world knew better. An interesting thought. Now the next one is a rather fun one, because as we well know, one of the key things that makes the modern age is that we have electricity. Well, what about the Baghdad battery? And that's where things get really weird, because the Baghdad battery existed at a time where you absolutely shouldn't have had a battery. And the weird thing is it worked. It is an artifact consisting of a ceramic pot, a tube of copper, and a rod of iron fixed together with bitumen. They discovered it in present-day Kujut Rabu in Iraq in 1936, close to the ancient city of Ctesiphon, the capital of the Parthian Empire and the Sasanian Empire, both of which were way back when. So the Parthians came first from about 150 BC and fell in around 223 AD, which is when the Sasanian took over and lasted until around 650 AD. It could have come from either of those periods, we're not sure. The origin and purpose remain unclear, because while in the modern day we'd say, well, batteries are used for all sorts. Yes, but what did they use it for? It worked like a galvanic cell, possibly for electroplating, or maybe even a medical thing like electrotherapy. There is no electroplated object known from this period that has been found, but that doesn't mean much. And of course, archaeologists, being archaeologists, reject the idea that this was for metal plating. It could have been used for medicine or magic. This is unclear, though. 10 similar clay vessels had been found earlier. 4 were found in the 1930s in Seleucia, dating to the Sassanid period. 3 sealed with bitumen and containing a bronze cylinder, again sealed with a pristine papyrus wrapper containing decomposed fiber rolls, held in place with 4 bronze and iron rods sunk into the ground. Their cult meaning and use aren't really known. 6 other clay vessels were found in Ctesiphon. Some had bronze wrappers with badly decomposed cellulose fibers. Others had iron nails and lead plates. The interesting fact is the current whereabouts of the artifacts is unknown since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So they got lost in that regard. Thank you for the hearts there, Endless Thoughts, assuming they were for me. I see that Spooky has wandered off. But yeah, batteries that worked. Why did they work? What were they for? It's an amazing thing. And we just don't know. But work they did. So there you have it. The next interesting thing is the Roman dodecahedron, and recently I believe they've at least come up with a very good theory of what it was for, because nobody could figure them out. Now imagine a hollow 12-sided form which has little balls on every point and holes allowing access to the inside. And they've been found all over the place, and nobody could figure out what the hell they were for or why. We know when they came from. They were almost entirely, certainly a Roman thing. They are known as the Gallo-Roman dodecahedron. A small hollow object made of copper alloy cast into a regular shape with 12 flat pentahexagonal faces, each face with a circular hole of varying diameter in the middle, and the holes connecting to the hollow center, each corner having a protruding knob. They rarely show signs of much wear, and they do not have any inscribed numbers or letters. Some said they were dice, but that can't be, because they would have to have some kind of thing to show what they were for. They vary in size from 4 to 11 centimeters. The holes in the face have diameters ranging from 6 mil to 40 mil. The lightest known example weighs only 35 grams, and the heaviest 1,000 grams. Why? And it seems, actually, they may have been used for darning woolen clothing. So when you fixed your socks, you used one of these. Maybe. They've been found in military camps, in baths, theatres, coin halls, on riverbeds. They were mostly made in Gaul between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD. There's a lot of debate as to what they're really for. Some say they were for estimating distances or the size of distant objects, but that seemed not very good. I think a spool knitting device is probably the best version, but why was it always made of bronze? Maybe a toy? It's often found in coin hoards so that they were considered valuable, and that maybe their use was connected to money, that it was used to check the size of coins to make sure they weren't clipped. Maybe. It's not really sure at all. They might have been a point of status in guilds. They're too light to have been a weapon. I like the idea that they were used for sewing, for wool, fixing your socks. I like that. So that's where I'm going with at the moment. The next interesting one is also an ancient artifact, only it's not. And this is the London hammer. And the reason that it's annoying as hell to archaeologists, it is a common iron and wood hammer that was found in 1936 in London, Texas. It doesn't make any sense because it's a common and garden variety hammer, but it's an iron hammer, so fairly modern, except it was encased in rock. Now, it was found by a local couple, Max Hahn and his female friend, walking around. They found a piece of loose rock with a bit of wood in it, and they took it home. A decade later, their son Max broke the rock open and found the hammerhead inside. It's 6 inches or 15 centimeters long, and with a diameter of about 1 inch or 25 mil. So a small light hammer, possibly a metalworking hammer, which is pretty cool. It attracted attention because it was encased in rock. How did it become encased in rock, which for something to be like that would have to be thousands of years old? Now, some people, such as the creationist Carl Boll, said it was a pre-flood discovery, a pre-antediluvian Earth idea, which wasn't well taken to. Now, the rock is supposed to be thousands and thousands of years old, but the hammer is typical of American tools from the 19th century. So how do you get a modern tool in ancient rock when it takes centuries for the rock to harden like that around it? We don't know. Ah, Spooky is gone due to our dear friends in ESCOM. That's amazing. And huge thanks to ESCOM for supporting the channel. Dum 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 dum. Well, Mjolnir, that's something I've often wondered, and I'll tell you why. Because the time from when the gods were supposed to walk the earth, what would they have had as weapons? Would they have used iron? So would Mjolnir have been made from iron? Unless, well, I suppose if Thor was a god, yes, because why not? The gods are, after all, the gods. I don't know. A bit of an interesting question. Now, another interesting find was the Sandbyborg massacre. Around about the 5th century, there was a site in Sweden that the archaeologists were digging up from the 5th century, and they found a human skeleton lying on the floor of a house. And they were like, why did nobody bury it? Interesting. Then they found another, and another. And all of them had been executed with swords, axes, and clubs, and then abandoned in the walls of their houses until the walls themselves collapsed in and the houses eventually became buried. An archaeologist working at the dig said that they found the remains of 26 people and a half-eaten fish, suggesting the attack was a complete surprise, and coins and jewelry, but no indication of who the attackers were or what they were so mad about. It remains a mystery because the money was left behind and all of the people inside who were not expecting attack were wiped out. Very weird. Another interesting thing is a cave in Kenya called the Pangayasaidi, which holds human artifacts from the Middle Stone Age right through to modern times. So it's been lived in for 78,000 years. That's pretty cool. It has been excavated, and there's more than 1,000 square feet of space in the main chamber. The cave could have held all kinds of different people, as many as hundreds of people. Maybe that's why it was so popular. Cave Network is in a tropical forest location, but it's had a very, very steady climate for a very long time, while other parts of Africa have gone through droughts and all sorts. There were large stone tools from the earliest inhabitants and more specialized arrowheads and blades later on. And it's kind of weird. It's like people just found the cave, liked the cave, moved into the cave, and have lived in the cave for huge amounts of time. So, yeah, strange. But there you go, in Kenya. Hierakonpolis in Egypt, one of the most significant towns along the Nile 5,000 years ago, hundreds of years before the pyramids were built. and wealthy residents showed their status by keeping exotic pets. A cemetery excavation turned up 2 elephants, several baboons, and a hippo among the animals. But it wasn't all kibble and petting, it seems, because the animals showed signs of bone fractures that had healed, and they may have got hurt during their capture or while being tied in place. The bones would only have been able to heal while the animals were protected, which is how we know that they were kept in captivity. Not a very happy story for them, but it shows that zoos were popular and kept just for their looking at 5,000 years ago, which is pretty cool. 34,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers buried several people, including 2 adolescent boys, east of present-day Moscow. When the graves were excavated, they found that the boys, who died at the age of roughly 10 and 12, showed signs of severe disability, and they were buried together with their heads adjacent. Most intriguing is that included in the graves were 10,000 mammoth ivory beads, more than 20 armbands, around 300 pierced fox teeth, 16 ivory mammoth spears, carvings, antlers, and human fibulae, that's leg bones, laid across the chest of each child, in contrast to the adults who had almost no treasures, which showed that they were considered somehow royalty for their disabilities, which is pretty cool. Now, 90% of modern humans descend from a small population of Homo sapiens that left Africa around 60,000 years ago, which I think is bullshit, but scientists say. There you go. Scientists think that the group may have been so successful because they developed superior stone tools. Fine flaked stone blades rather than the bulky hand axes. There's a site in southern India where ancient human sites have not been well studied that show that people had advanced tools there more than 200,000 years ago. Now, does it mean that people left Africa in waves, or that different hominids came up with similar inventions separately, is unknown. But it's interesting, and it, again, it's one of those things. I'm going to be rude and say that the archaeologists work so hard to stick to their current theories rather than saying, hey, maybe we're wrong, that it becomes somewhat annoying. Now, believe what you will. It's weird, it's interesting. The next one is the alien skeleton. In 2003, a 6-inch tall skeleton with a pointy head was found, naturally mummified in Atacama Desert in Chile. Many people have claimed that the skeleton came from an alien. Scientists say that no, it was a young 6-year-old child, and it was probably human. The little mummy, which is female and is now called Ata, is said to be related to indigenous Chileans, but also had some European ancestry. And researchers found several mutations of her genetics that are involved with growth. So she didn't grow properly, was partly, they say, European, which makes no sense for being in Chile, but they don't know why she was so small, which goes to show that the idea that maybe it was an alien is a much better option. So Yabu sucks to archaeologists, but that's just me being annoying. So yeah, the weird things that you get. Is there more out there? Always. Will we find and understand all of it? Almost certainly not. But one thing I will tell you is that we will keep doing these lives, and we will try to come up with some pretty cool stuff. And for as long as we do, we will keep the channel going for you guys. So come back again. It's been great, and I hope you've enjoyed it. We've run out of things to talk about, alas. So we are going to end a little early. But thank you for being with me. And thank you especially to Endless Thoughts. I do hope that you have enjoyed these weird things we have discovered. And we will see what we can come up with for a live tomorrow to entertain you further. But until then, sleep sweet, sleep deep, and sleep with one eye open, because the world is a lot weirder than you think. And there are more things out there than you can possibly imagine. Good night.